Okay, so in the previous video, we demonstrated how to use ADONET 2.0 in a connected mode to connect to a new SQL Server Compact Edition database and retrieve results and print them out to a console window. We're going to go through that exact same example, except this time using an Express Edition database, just to show the differences. There's not many. So you could probably skip this one and be just fine. But again, what we're trying to do here is build a case to show the older technologies and how they were used and build up to the newer technology, the linked to entities. And so that's why we're doing this. So I want to we're going to just take our Compact Edition example and minimize it. I'm going to open up a second instance of Visual Studio 2010, or I'm sorry, Visual C# 2010 Express Edition. We're going to create a new project, and I want to call this, what did I call the other one? ADONET 2 Connected Compact. So we're going to call this ADONET 2 Connected Express. There we go. And we'll click OK. Just like the previous example, and I'm going to go through this one a little bit faster. We're going to add a new service-based database this time. We'll go ahead and leave it with the default name, database1.mdf. Here I'm going to just go ahead and cancel this data source configuration wizard one more time. I'm going to double-click the database so that it opens it up in the Solution Explorer. There are no tables yet. I'm going to right-click and select Add New Table. And so we're going to start out here. Customer ID is going to be a type int, and it's not going to allow any nulls. We'll come back to that one in just a moment. First name, we'll take nvarchar 50 is just fine. Last name, nvarchar 50 is fine. City, nvarchar, and state, nvar. Great. Come back to customer ID. I'm going to make this into a identity column. We're also going to make this the primary key for our table. We're going to save this as customers. Then I'm going to show table data just like we did previously, and I'm going to add both my name and Steve's name. Hey Steve, how's it going? Whoops. Great. Okay, so we have our records there, and we can shut that down. Now in our static void main, what we're going to do is step one, we're going to handshake with the database. In step two, we're going to specify the command, or rather the request, and then in step three, we're going to use the data, right? Okay, so this time what we want to do is we're going to need to use a different namespace. Now I think that I don't need to reference anything. I think I can just do this, system.data.SQL client, and it's already there for me because the reference was already created. And I don't need to go through that step like I did in the previous example. Okay, so that's good. But the thing that's a little bit harder about using the Express Edition database, and notice I'm using SQL connection, not SQL CE connection, so that's one subtle difference. The class name that we're working with in this namespace is different than with the Compact Edition namespace that we were using, the SQL CE .dll. Okay, so what we want to do is still create a connection object. And we're going to set that to a new SQL connection. And here again, I can choose to pass in a connection string. So that part is similar, right? And this is what's more difficult. And this is what throws a lot of people. That dot means use my local instance of SQL Express. Unless you named it something differently whenever you installed it, that should be the name for your SQL instance, or your SQL Express Edition instance. If it's not, you're going to have an error, and it's going to be because you can't connect to the database. So watch the video again way back in day 1 or day 2 or day 5 or whenever we installed it to make sure that you went through that installation process. You accepted all the defaults. If you did, this should work. If it doesn't, well, let me know. Maybe we can figure it out together. Okay. Don't be mad at me if I can't help you figure it out though. The other thing we're going to do here is go attach DB file name. And this is where another spot we might have a little trouble with is finding it in our application. Now, we might have to thumb around for this and look for it, but we should have a data directory that will host our database1.mdf file. So we may have to come back to that notion here in just a few moments. It has to do with user instances and how things are ultimately loaded up from a file in your project into SQL Server 2008 Express Edition. So we'll just have to see how this goes. And here's where we set user instance equal to true, and that's another critical piece. Everything else should be good as long as I spelled everything correctly. Let's make sure this is good. I think it is. Data directory, database1 MDF. That looks good. Okay. Again, those connection strings, man. They are what will throw you for a loop every single time. But once you get it figured out for your setup and your installation, you can use that from that point on. Okay, step 2 again, we're going to create a SQL command, or I'm sorry, a SQL command. My command equals my connection dot create command. And then down here we'll create that SQL data reader, my data reader. Here in the command, again, we could take a couple of different tacks at this. And I'll start off here, just like we did previously, and we'll just do customers. And here, my command dot command type, we're going to put that to type table direct, just like we did previously. And I think by the end of this video, I'm going to have a little fun with that and change this up and show you a couple different things we can do. Okay, we'll come back to that though. All right, so my data reader dot, I'm sorry, equals my command dot execute reader. Again, we're creating that envelope and say, fill up my envelope with whatever the command, whatever the request is that we gave the database. All right, so here again, now we're going to assume that we have data in our data reader, and we're going to use that data. So I'm going to go my data reader. So as long as there's more data to read, let's continue to loop through this. That's what that statement says. And here we're going to go console.write line, and we're going to go my data reader sub1 plus, that should give us the first name, and then my data reader element 2, and that should give us the last name. And then we're going to close our connection. Whoops, close our connection close. And then finally we're going to console.read line so we can see what we actually did. Okay, and we're going to come back to this example. Hopefully this will work, and if it doesn't, after I save, the first place I'm going to look is here and make sure that that's correct and I didn't forget anything. So let's run it. Uh-oh, there's some errors. Let's see what we did here. Looks like we have an escape sequence issue, and I think I know what that is. A single slash inside a literal string will not work the way we intend. What we need to do is to escape it by using 2. That's why we got a little red squiggly right under that. So that's the first error that we've encountered. And I think I'm going to hit another error here. Yep. Looks like, well, let's see what it is. That enumeration is not supported by the .NET framework. So that's the first that we can't do a table direct with SQL Server Express. So what are our options? Well, let's change up the command a little bit here. If we can't do that, if we can't do a table direct, then what can we do? Well, we'll have to do a text. And what does that mean? I hope it's as simple as this. Select star from customers. That should work. So let's save it and run it. And it does. It works. So, again, while the interface is the same, what each vendor supports or what each product supports might be a little bit different. Okay. So now, as a variation on this idea, let's do one other thing. Because we said the thing that differentiates the Express Edition from the Compact Edition is that you can create stored procedures, right? So let's do this. Let's open up and go and create a new stored procedure. And we're going to call this Get Customers. And we'll get rid of that. And we'll just go select star from customers. All right, and so it created a Get Customers stored proc for us. Awesome. And now let's change up our mycommand.command text equals get customers, right? And then what are we going to put here for the command type? Whoops, equals, we're going to use stored procedure. Let's see if this works. I'm going to cross my fingers. And it does. It works. So that's awesome, right? We were able to build our application exactly like the previous example, this time using Express Edition database, this time using those features of the Express Edition that are unique to it as opposed to the Compact Edition. We're still working in connected mode. So that means while I am doing everything between here and here and here, while I'm using the data in step 3, I have a connection live to the database. That means nobody else can be potentially working with the data while I am doing something with it. So we need to be cognizant of that while we're working with the data or updating it or whatever the case might be. We just have to be aware of that, and that's why using this connected mode with a service-based database, not always a great idea unless you get your data and you get off. Don't hold the connection open for several minutes or whatever the case might be, because you might be blocking others from using that particular data. Okay, so what I didn't show you in this video were some permutations on this idea. For example, I didn't show you how to pass in input parameters or how to receive back output parameters. But don't mistake the main point of this video, and that's to demonstrate the basic steps that were required and all the code I had to write to access data. And ultimately, I want to contrast this older style, this older API, with a new one that again, the cool kids are using. So in this example, we used a connected approach, meaning that while we were working with the data, we had an open connection to the database the entire time. In this simple scenario, it's not a big deal because we simply iterated through the data using a data reader. In a more complex example, we would be holding that connection open for a long time, and that would be problematic from a resource perspective and from potentially a blocking perspective. ADO.NET has a second approach that was called disconnected, and we're going to look at that in the next 2 videos, so we'll see you there. Thank you.